Okay, after camera stuff later. But yeah, so I thought, um, I was fighting for my transplant team to put me to sleep because the fact that I had to constantly go through this, I have to struggle through this pain every single time. It wasn't helping me mentally, and it just made me so broken and miserable inside because it's like every time like I would try to fight and have them put me to sleep, and then they're like, oh, like we can't put you to sleep because of your heart, and it's like I don't care though. Like like I don't care though. Like I need peace of mind. I cannot be awake for this. Like I can't physically, mentally handle this. And when you're put on a transplant team, you are handled multiple resources, especially if you're under 18. You are handled a bunch of things. Like I've gotten a psychiatrist, an art therapist, a yoga instructor, um, a nutritionist, um, someone to help me exercise. They even had a female pastor, and I liked her. She was very nice. Everybody in general was just so nice, and I wish I still saw everybody, but I'm not gonna I'm not gonna open that Pandora's box. Um, but yeah, so this process was the most challenging that I have ever went through. And when it came down to it, the further I went in, the more I went into this deep hole in my mind. And it got into a point where I literally did not care how I got out that hospital as long as I just did not experience this anymore. And if you're not catching my drift, I'm basically saying that I did not care whether or not if I died at this point, as long as I get the hell out of that hospital and not have to deal with that pain anymore. Now, obviously, I'm not going to tell my doctors. I would not tell my doctors that, just for the simple fact that I'm not interested in suddenly not being able to use plastic knives and forks. And I'm not interested in being piled with extra medication. And also for the simple fact that even though I would like to, I know that I wasn't going to do it. So there's that. But it was just, but the IV changes was really the main thing that just was making me very sad and angry about what I was going through. It made me very suicidal. Um, and it was just weird too. Because to be 18, when I agreed to have this heart transplant, my mind at that very first moment of me hearing about needing this transplant was, oh, like, I am a person of color. Like, dying is not an option. But along the way, going through the waiting process, I honestly did not care anymore. And I told some people, including my own mother, because what else can I do? And I obviously couldn't ask for help with something like that because, again, I'm not stupid. I'm not interested in putting myself in a situation to feel any more miserable that I could ever be. Um, with that being said, um, March 16th. What I was doing on March 16th. So the day before, right? The day before March 16th. I was with my nurse, and we just got back up from, it was either from an event or from being outside, one or the other. Most likely from, for whatever reason, I was not in my room. I was in the wheelchair downstairs somewhere. I think because there was an event. And, oh, and I was also waiting on some food. I did not eat. I did not eat a lot of hospital food throughout my stay because I had people who was the plug. I had a plug, not a plug, but I had a food plug. Okay, but yeah. Uh, so apparently, my nurse got a phone call, and after getting a phone call, we got upstairs, and it was the doctor. It was the surgeon. And he was telling us that basically that they had a heart for me. And at this point, I was in total shock. And when you get, when you finally have a donor, you don't, obviously you don't get to meet them, but you two sign the same paper. And even though I never gotten to meet this particular person, I saw their name. I saw their name. And and like clearly it's not like their full name because the way people write and scribble, like their first name you can't read for jack anything, but their last name I could clearly see, and it started with a Q. so I can only have a few assumptions, right? And this particular donor was a high-risk donor, mainly because they went to jail. And obviously, if you go to jail, like, things are gonna happen to you in there. Shout out to all the inmates, I guess. Shout out to the inmates with a heart. But yeah, and once you sign this paper confirming, like, you accepting this heart, you have 24 hours. They have 24 hours to get you in and out of the surgery room, because the organ only has a span of 24 hours of it being fresh, because they have to put it in while the organ is fresh. So either I got in, by the time I signed this paper, like, either they just passed or they were on their way to passing. And so March 16th was the day I finally got my heart. At this point, I would have to put this video into 2 parts to go into the social aspects of waiting, and to go into detail about the services and what I got in as a child recipient. But for this particular video, it's solely focused on my on the actual process. So yes, so after I finally got in this heart, they stopped doing the neck IVs, which is great, and I switched to regular IVs. And also I ended up on the adult side. Chan 10 is like the kid ICU, so at this point I ended up on the adult ICU, which is drastically different. I hate the adult side with a passion, because for some reason adults get treated a lot worse than kids, so, which I found pretty odd considering it's a hospital, and why is there a vast difference between how the rooms are. Like, why does the kids get better cable? Like, they don't need to be watching like TBS. Like, I'm confused. They even have HBO, but that's besides the point. But yeah, I ended up on the adult side, and I was on the adult side for a while. So that's where the scars come in, right? So as you can see, I have this huge incision all the way down, and then I also have my good and trusty chest tubes. This particular, but prior to this surgery, I already had this incision, but I like to say that every few years I get my scar refreshed. Yeah. So they try to stay within the area that I'm already cut, so I don't have a bunch of scars, thank God. But this particular surgery, instead of having 2 chest tubes, I ended up with 2 extra holes. So originally I had these 2, but now I have like 4. So you wake up with all sorts of wires and tubing in your body. Not the greatest thing. I want to say by the week after I had the tubes removed, I wouldn't compare this to giving birth. I've never gave birth in my life, but I'm pretty sure that it could possibly be similar, but 9 times less, yeah? Because you have to breathe in and they have to pull that out and you can feel it. So if for some reason you're a person who is waiting uh, for the organ, or if you're having some type of heart surgery that requires chest tubes, tell them to give you some morphine, some type of pain pill, because those actually help in terms of pulling out tubes in your body. It helps make you feel less uncomfortable. Yeah? So, and then I think I also had a pacemaker. I don't know, because usually I have pacemakers when I got my aorta repaired. But I think for the transplant, I want to say I had a pacemaker, because when you're in surgery, they have to like have a machine breathe for you too, and then to like switch the hearts out. I don't know in depth what that looks like. I might do a reaction video on that, to be honest. But yeah, so I think I had a pacemaker too. So and they pulled those out, which sometimes feels uncomfortable. Sometimes you might feel like electric thing. Sometimes you don't, and that's mainly because of your nerves. So, but yeah. So, chest tubes, and then you get physical therapy. Um, Throughout your stay too. So you're walking, even with the chest tubes, you will eventually get some sort of physical therapy. And then after the removal of the tubes, I ended up still continuing with my physical therapy. Throughout the whole process, I was encouraged to walk around the ICU, so best believe I ended up knowing the whole floor. Especially since my sleeping times were screwed up, I was very familiar with the daytime and nighttime nurses and the people who deliver my food and stuff. So, but yeah. And then I eventually ended up going back to Champ 10, which was very exciting. And I ended up in the same room that I originally stayed in. And in between those two times, I have had, by the time it gotten closer to me leaving, I've gotten my first heart biopsy. And when I realized that I had to go through these biopsies for the rest of my life, that was more of a realization like, oh, so it's over, but it's not really over for me. I have to do this for the rest of my life. But what they tell you is it will decrease over time, which it has. It definitely has. Thank God. Especially, oh, ooh, wow. Especially if you are like me and you're like a college student and you want to do stuff. Like, realistically speaking, you can't 100% travel if you're fresh out the box from having a transplant. And then you have to be in the hospital from every week to every 2 weeks to every month to every other month. Like, you have to be your furthest out, which would technically, I would technically say like you would have to be like a good, I want to say 2 years out, in my opinion, if you want to like study out of the state that you got your transplant in. Because at least they can finesse and move things around a bit more. It wouldn't be so uptight. But yeah. And then it was on March 30th, I want to say, I was finally released. And I cried a lot. I definitely did. I cried a lot coming out of the hospital because physical contact, not to say it wasn't deprived from me, but it was just one of those days where it's like you barely had sunshine because I was in basically all winter, and then the day I got out it was raining. I was so mad. Like, the day I was supposed to get out, I ended up catching a fever, and it didn't help that it was sunny as hell outside, so I was pissed off and angry. And then when I got home, it was on a day when it was all rainy and cold, and at that point I just felt miserable. The nurses were so nice to throw a party for me. I was just one of those people, like, as soon as something happens, my overall energy was like thrown off. So once that was like a thing, like my energy was just like, okay, cool, but I'm ready to go home now. I'm so sorry, like, like, I'm not enjoying myself. Yeah, sure, I'll eat some pizza, but at this point, I'm ready to dip. Like, I can't, I cannot. Like, um, but yeah, and when I officially got home, I ended up getting some physical therapy there. I had some type of nurse checking in on me. But other than that, that was my transplant experience. I spent 100 days exactly, apparently, in the hospital from December 22nd to March 30th. I was in the hospital. And my life wasn't the same ever since. I could talk about the whole, like, social aspect of being in the hospital for so long in a different video, and I will also talk about the social aspects of being in a hospital for a long period of time. But right now I just want to focus this video solely on my process getting a heart. And with that being said, if you guys have officially made it to the end, congratulations, kissies. Comment the needle emoji. I almost flipped you guys off, I'm so sorry. Like, comment the needle emoji. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel. Follow me on Instagram, follow me on Twitter, and Tick of the Talk. Become one of my kitties, and I'll see you guys another day.